Football is back. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. Preseason is here for the Bombers. Football is back, like I said, and I'm excited. Honestly, there's a decent amount of changes that we're looking at here in the CFL in Winnipeg. Obviously, appreciate to everyone who had followed all of the Jets content this year that Zach was covering, and then as well, both him and me doing the live streams and the playoffs and all that. Unfortunately, not the result we wanted for the Jets, but the Bombers are back. So, preseason, week 2 of the preseason. Again, if you want to see league-wide CFL coverage, make sure to check out my other channel, Canadian Football Central, as we cover everything there, me and my co-host Rick. And I was at this game, so funny enough, Zach was actually in the press box this game for kind of the stuff that he's doing with his schooling, and so he's got to watch the game from there. But yeah, so pregame, a few things to note. Of course, football is back. So Dalton Schoen and a couple others, Dalton Schoen, Nick Dembski, and a few others that were not playing tonight, as well as Lofton, didn't even dress or anything, weren't in tonight. And one of the big things for the Bombers, Jason Hogan, new offensive coordinator, because of course Buck Pierce, we had lost, and he goes over to the BC Lions to be their head coach there. I'm going to actually quickly roll through a little bit of the depth chart here, just for people to be aware. So offensive line tonight, going from left tackle all the way down to right tackle, we had Stanley Bryant, then we had Eli, then Kolinkowski, then Neufeld, and then Randolph. So Randolph kind of sliding into a full-time spot there, and then Eli slotting into Liam Dobson's spot. Claire's followed by Strevler, Wilson, and I believe it's Artipose. I can't remember exactly how you say it. He was a quarterback that we gotten from Tennessee, I want to say, in the draft. Running backs today, Oliveira followed by Peterson and Clifton Cooley. And the reason here is because Peyton Logan, who is our backup running back, he will be our second string, is injured. We had gotten him from Calgary through free agency. He will also be most likely our kickoff and punt returner once he is healthy. But it's looking like probably week 3 of the regular season, so the Bombers' second game of the season, is when we're probably going to see Peyton Logan back in the lineup. At fullback, we had Michael Chris Ike. And then if we're looking at our wide receivers on the left side, we had Wheatfall, followed by Mitchell and Quemo. On the right side, we had Clarcius with Hall, Brown, and Wallace behind him. At slot back on the left side, we had Reggie White Jr., which we had gotten from the Alouettes, followed by Harris and Corcoran. And then on the left side, we had Stearns, which we had gotten from Saskatchewan, and Myron Mitchell. I'm going to talk a bit about Myron Mitchell today. I thought Myron Mitchell had a very, very strong game today. He looked very, very good last year in the preseason for Winnipeg, but unfortunately there just wasn't a spot for him. This year, though, might be a spot available for Myron Mitchell. Decent talent there. Looking at the defensive line, we had Willie Jefferson on the left side defensive end. On the right side defensive end, though, James Vaughters, brought in from Calgary. And overall, I think he had a solid game. He got the Bombers' first tackle of the game. And again, I'm hoping that this can reinvigorate the D-line a bit. However, the standout performance of the defensive line was not Jake Thomas, who obviously is one of our stars, but was in my opinion, Adams. Adams was very good. He wanted that spot. That spot is going to be, that second defensive tackle spot is going to either Adams, Schmeckel, or Woods. That's kind of your toss-up there. So, a spot available at defensive tackle. We'll have to see what Jordan Younger and Coach O'Shea show for their next preseason game. At linebacker, we have Wilson and Cramdy with Tony Jones in the center. So relatively familiar middle linebacker core. Obviously, no Adam Bighill as he is now retired, but Tony Jones had played a lot in that spot with Adam Bighill being injured last year, so not a big adjustment for the Bombers. And then in the secondary, we had Terrell Bonds, Nichols on the left-hand side. Then on the right side, of course, Evan Holm. And then Bridges slots in, as well as Gowan got some reps as well as Avery. As obviously Terrell Ford is now at the Edmonton Elks. And then at free safety, we had Parker and Allen. So just kind of wanted to go through that and then Of course, Sheehan and Castillo are your punter and kicker, respectively, and Benson, long snapper. So no changes there. At returner today, we were playing a mixture of Myron Mitchell as well as, I want to say it was like LaRue. He was, I think we were playing the other long snapper there. I don't know. We were doing something a little interesting there. But Myron Mitchell at least got some reps there as well. But going into the game itself, first quarter, Eli takes a holding penalty on like the second play of the game or whatever. We had went for a pass, went incomplete before that. Saskatchewan then go offside. Bombers, though, go 2 and out and are forced to punt. Sheehan, solid punt by him. Sheehan had a good night for his, there's a decent amount of punting tonight. No touchdowns in this game, just field goals. So solid game for Jamison Sheehan. Saskatchewan on their first drive would go 2 and out. And then Strevler goes in short yardage when the Bombers start pushing back, and he gets it done. So Strevler, again, that's mainly what his role is going to be. But obviously, we're going to see him as a backup quarterback, going to be starting the home opener as Zach Caleros serves his 1-game suspension. For those who are not aware, Zach Caleros was suspended for 1 game for a drug test, not for failing a drug test, but for failing to report in. As apparently he had gotten a text from the league, but he thought it was like a scam because he didn't recognize the number or whatever. You have, I think it's either 48 or 72 hours to actually perform the drug test, but I believe you only have around 2 hours to respond. So I'm not going to lie. It was a little bit frustrating in the sense of that obviously Caleros has done drug tests with the CFL before. So I imagine this was the CFL reaching out to him in a different way than they normally would in the past. So just a very strange situation, but we are going to have Strevler playing that first game, so we're going to have to get it done then. After Strevler gets that done in short yardage, though, Caleros goes in and he pulls out a bit of that scrambling. So pocket was collapsing a little bit quicker than I'd like today. Not going to lie, that's a little bit of a concern I have this year is the offensive line. Not necessarily that it's extremely weak, but we got some young talent in there, and I don't know how I feel about them as whole as a unit. I saw a lot of inconsistency last year. I would like for a little bit more stability this year, but we'll have to see. But Caleros, really good as a scrambling quarterback. He scrambles, gets a nice pass for a first down. Bombers try to push it a little more, can't really though, and they go 2 and out, and so Sheehan, another good punt by him. On the return here, Bombers take a no yards penalty. Riders get 15 yards there. Riders try to drive it down, can't really get much going. They're forced to punt as well. And then when the Bombers get back on offense, this is when Myron Mitchell starts getting going. There's a good connection for him, and the Bombers are able to push it down the field far enough for Sergio Castillo to hit a field goal, 3-0 Winnipeg. Now, normally I actually have the distance of the field goal written down. For some reason, I don't right here. It was 19 yards, I just checked. 19-yard field goal for Sergio Castillo makes it 3-0 Winnipeg. Riders try to get going, and Trevor Harris with a good connection for Keyshawn Johnson. And that's the end of the first quarter. Going into the second quarter, though, Willie Jefferson gets a good swat on one down, and we actually pick it up and we run it all the way down into the end zone. I'm not going to lie, from the second that Jefferson swatted this, I knew it was going to be ruled incomplete and that this was not some sort of fumble. But in football, if that ball drops loose and you haven't heard a whistle, you're picking it up and you're running. You're not thinking of any of that, and we'll deal with it later. And so they deal with it later, and it's determined that it's incomplete pass, but that's fine. Brett Lothar hits a 31-yard field goal for the Riders to make this 3-3, and this is when Strevler goes in. Not a short yardage, but actually is actually like now you're like your quarterback here, as Caleros and Trevor Harris both predictably played 1 quarter, and that was about it for them. Myron Mitchell with a couple of passes from Strevler, so he had some success with Caleros, also some success with Chris Strevler. Very pleased by him. There was a great catch by Kevin Clarcius, and the Bombers were moving. They got around halfway down the field, and then Sergio Castillo would hit a 50-yard field goal for Winnipeg, making it 6-3 Bombers. Now, funny enough, so we would go to kickoff here, and not going to lie, I was not impressed with the kickoff team here, as it was Sergio Castillo himself who has to hit the guy out of bounds. So, funny enough, a guy like Sergio Castillo, can't imagine he's practicing with a lot of contact, but was able to get it done on kickoff to at least ensure that we did not give up a touchdown like that. It's just one touchdown given up in a game like this can cost you it. But good play by Sergio Castillo. Adams with a great tackle for loss. Again, I think he really showed that he wants that spot at the D tackle position. And so Jake Maier was out in the second quarter for Saskatchewan. He was their quarterback that they were rolling with a bit. For those not aware, Jake Maier, starting quarterback of Calgary last year. Jake Maier, not necessarily terrible, but Calgary was relying a lot on that passing game. And so Jake Maier, he would have a lot of good passes, but then he was leading the league for a while in passing yards, but he was also leading it in interceptions. And that was the problem, is that they relied so much on the passing game. And Jake Maier just looked to be not quite good enough to be the starter that they need. A good backup, a very good backup, arguably one of the best backups in the league from a throwing perspective, but not quite good enough to be the consistency they want at a starting QB spot. So he's now the backup in Saskatchewan. It was a good move by the Riders to pick him up, to have him backing up Trevor Harris, especially with Trevor Harris. We're talking about like a 39-year-old quarterback here. So when it comes to injury problems, it's entirely possible he goes out and Jake Maier has to play a decent amount. Jake Maier, suitable backup for that role. Schmeckel then gets a great tackle. Again, like I said, a big battle for that second D tackle spot on the defensive line. And then right as the next play is happening, Cam Allen with an interception on Jake Maier's pass, and Bombers now have possession. However, unfortunately, Chris Strevler would then throw an interception of his own as Dalkey gets the interception for Saskatchewan. However, Winnipeg challenges this. Now, I didn't notice this initially. However, on the replay, I noticed that there might be some defensive pass interference. So Mike O'Shea challenges for defensive pass interference, and he is successful. Bombers keep possession here, and it's a first down for Winnipeg. Bombers push it just a little bit more, and Sergio Castillo hits a 41-yard field goal, making this 9-3 for Winnipeg. And so overall, it was looking like it was going to go into a bit of a kicking shootout, which, not that Brett Lother's a bad kicker by any means, but not going to lie, I have a lot of faith in Sergio Castillo if we go to a kicking shootout with almost any kicker in this league. The only two kickers I really view as a threat to Sergio Castillo in sense of if we're going to a kicking shootout is Lyram Haralahu of the Toronto Argonauts, when he's healthy, as well as Sean White of the BC Lions. But then again, even with Sean White, I have concerns about how well his kicks are in the deep ball as opposed to some of the shorter kicks, which BC has relied a lot on a lot of shorter kicks in prior seasons. But anyways, now, kickoff again. Adams is given a 10-yard misconduct penalty on kickoff. I'm not going to lie, I did not like this penalty. And the reason I did not like this penalty is not that Adams is free of any wrongdoing. The penalty that Adams took, I thought was relatively warranted. However, if you look at the moment where Adams takes this penalty and you rewind the clock about 5 to 10 seconds, you realize why he is so frustrated. In the sense of he is hit to the ground, tries to get up numerous times, the guy's right on top of him, and he's hitting him back down. And that's just not okay. You can't do that. And so it was and this is not a case of a guy falling on him. This is a guy repeatedly taking shot after shot after shot after he's very much out of the play. And so Adams gets up and says, screw this, and throws him to the ground like a wrestling move. Exactly the kind of response you'd expect. Again, not saying he doesn't warrant a penalty here, but I thought there should have been either offsetting penalties here, or the Riders should have had a penalty because they initiated this whole altercation. But Bombers getting the penalty here. Realistically, I think offsetting penalties is what I would have actually expected from this, but it is what it is. Gets a 10-yard misconduct penalty. But not a lot would happen, and we would go into halftime. So Bombers up 9-3 at the half. Not a ton I can complain about, although in general, kind of wish we would have gotten at least one touchdown, as not every game you can win in a kicking duel. Again, if you have a kicking duel, that works until it doesn't, in the sense of kicking duel works if you have a good kicker, which we do. But if you give up one touchdown in a kicking duel, that changes everything. And so I don't always like it being that close, but then again, it's not up to me. Anyways, third quarter, Bombers started off, and they'll take a defensive pass interference shortly after the start of the quarter, and it'll be first down for Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan drives it down a little bit, and Brett Lother, with a 39 yards out, goes for the kick. He hits the uprights. It is no good. Still 9-3 Winnipeg. The Bombers try to get going. They can't quite, though. Bombers will punt. And this is where I couldn't believe that there wasn't another penalty. Again, I'm not someone to really try to rag on stuff. A Saskatchewan Rough Rider player had one of our guys in like a sleeper hold behind the play, which I was kind of like, don't think that's legal. I think, although it was behind the play, I don't think the official actually saw it. And it was just kind of one of those things where I was surprised I didn't see any sort of replay or anything on that, because it was kind of like, felt like there should have been a replay for it, but whatever. Maybe I'm missing something. Fair enough. But Riders would push, and then the Riders in that red zone trying to go for the end zone. A awesome defensive play by Avery in our end zone to shut that down. So Avery looking for a spot in that secondary. Maybe he gets one. Riders forced to go for a field goal here, as that was on second down. And Brett Lawther hits a 26-yard field goal, making this 9-6 Winnipeg. Terry Wilson goes in for the Bombers, and he's going to try to lead them through a bit of offense in that third quarter. Bombers would push. And then the Saskatchewan would knock the ball down, and they do recover it. And so this would be Rider ball interception here. And Saskatchewan gets possession going into the fourth quarter. Riders would push, and then Garrity, their backup kicker. So the Saskatchewan actually played their backup kicker today. Winnipeg did not. It was just Castillo that played, as that is Castillo's spot and no one else's. Garrity goes in, misses a 47-yard field goal. Now, I'm not blaming him for missing this. It's a 47-yard field goal, and you have a relatively new kicker. Still 9-6 Winnipeg. I'm not going to lie, that might be one of the worst field goal attempts I've ever seen. I don't even think he gets 5 yards vertically. I'm not trying to rip into the guy. I promise I'm not. I'm not saying that he's a terrible kicker or whatever. It's very possible that the pressure just got to him. It's one of those things where kicking is a high-pressure position. It's also very routine-based. And so it's one of those things where, getting your first opportunity to make a kick in the CFL, it's not always going to go so well. And you know what? At least fair enough to him. He would have a much better kick later in this game, but an ugly start for Garrity here. Bombers would then go back on offense. They try to get going. There'd be a nice pass from Terry Wilson to Clinton Cooley. And then Clinton Cooley just goes on a bit of a heater here. And I think Jason Hogan sees this and is like, you know what, let's keep the ball going to this. And there'd be another good pass for Clinton Cooley. And then the Bombers, not quite able to get it done on second down. Sergio Castillo goes and hits a 19-yard field goal, making this 12-6 for the Bombers. Now, Kona's in for Saskatchewan. So again, really changing out quarterbacks constantly here. Just trying to give everyone some reps. So Cone goes in for Saskatchewan. They'll take a holding penalty. Riders are able to push it down the field a bit, as Garrity will hit a 18-yard field goal, making this 12-9 for Winnipeg. Artipose goes in for the Bombers. He's able to kind of drive it down a bit, get some running plays in for Oliveira as well. And then Sergio Castillo hits a 22-yard field goal to make this 15-9 for the Bombers. And then we're kind of close to the near the end of the game. Winnipeg announces their attendance. The attendance at tonight's game was 27,913 people, which is just fantastic for the preseason, seriously. We're talking about a building that fits like 33,000 roughly. And so getting basically 28,000 for a preseason game is just fantastic. I can think of a decent amount of teams, not going to name any names in the CFL, that for a lot of their regular season home games do not get, hell, even half that attendance. And so 28,000 for the preseason, absolutely fantastic. Good job on the Bombers for marketing this team. Again, I think the CFL in general really this year needs to lean into the Canadian marketing. Especially, we've talked about it on the show on Canadian Football Central a lot, is about kind of the struggles that Toronto's had marketing. They got to market their team. You don't have to go drive down to Buffalo to go see football. You can see good football up here in Canada, especially the Argos. They won the Grey Cup last year and 2 years before that. It's not like you have a bad team. So, but all in all, hopefully, hoping that the the CFL really markets how they are a Canadian-based league and really try to get a lot of eyeballs on it. If this attendance is anything to go by, it's a good sign for the CFL. Riders have one more kind of drive of the game. Tommy Stevens goes in. I believe he had one drive he did earlier as well, kind of around the second quarter or even before Jake Mayer went in. At least that was what it was announced in the PA. I didn't actually see it on the field. Maybe he just went in for a play. I missed it. Riders tried to get something going, couldn't quite get it. and then kind of brought down Pocket just kind of collapsing on that last play as they tried to go for a bit of a Hail Mary, but the ball never gets out. And so that is game. Final score, 15-9 for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers with a nice preseason win. Is this a win that really matters? No, not really. We're talking preseason. It doesn't really mean much. The main thing that we're looking for here is who are guys that could potentially earn themselves starting spots. So if we're looking at some interesting players to look at, if we're looking at some potential changes, I'm curious for the offensive line. We saw Eli. I would be curious to see Vanterpool and Wallace get their kind of try, as they've kind of always been in that mixture. For them, they've always been that 6th and 7th offensive lineman, or even like that 7th and 8th when Dobson was in and Eli was your 6th. So I'd be curious to see those two guys get a try, see if they're able to put up any sort of significant impact. Jason Hogan's playbook, interesting to see. There were a few plays I liked. There's a few really deceiving handoffs that he does with a pulling guard I'm very interested about. I just really want to see, because it's kind of impossible to judge right now in the preseason, as he's obviously not going to pull out all his bag of tricks, but I'd really, really love to see the way he uses Brady Oliveira in our first game of the season, as I think that's going to be really key for an offensive coordinator to have success in Winnipeg, is you need an offensive coordinator that plays to their strengths. Brady Oliveira is a top player in this league. If you don't use him, you're handicapping yourself. And so I'm hoping that Brady Oliveira gets a lot of usage in that Jason Hogan playbook by the start of the season. Again, like I said, Myron Mitchell had a good night. I thought Adams had a very good night. Again, even though he took that misconduct penalty, I don't really hold that against him. Schmeckel looked solid. I thought Claricius looked a lot better than last year. I thought Claricius looked like he had improved, which I was very, 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 very happy to see. Reggie White Jr. looked okay. I kind of was hoping for a little bit more targets on Reggie White Jr. as well as Stearns. So hopefully maybe next game we see a bit more of a sample size of that. I thought Avery and Allen were pretty solid, so I'd like to see them get some more reps next game. And yeah, overall, not many complaints about the linebacker core or anything like that, or anything else really. Thought the running backs looked really good. Cooley was very impressive. I hope we see a bit more of that. Even if I'd be curious playing Cooley even at fullback where Chris Ike is, just because we've been playing him at halfback a bit. So I'd be curious to see them try Cooley at the fullback position. So I think that might be a suitable place for him. But let me know what you guys thought of the game in the comment section down below. Really, really appreciate all you guys tuning in. I know it has been a while. Make sure you guys leave a like, share it around, and subscribe if you haven't already. Again, also make sure to check out Canadian Football Central, where we do full league-wide coverage of the CFL. And until next time.